Raspberry Pi Installation Guide. This is the Raspberry Pi for 8 gigabits. It's a credit card-sized single-board computer, and its capabilities are astonishing. So you just got your first Raspberry Pi and are wondering how to get started? Here's what you need to do. There are a million things you can do with your mini computer, from using it as a web server to turning into a retro arcade. But first, you need to set up the Raspberry Pi, an OS on a microSD card. There are more than a dozen different OSes for Raspberry Pi, and there's even a way to run full Windows 11 on the Pi 4. However, Raspberry Pi OS, a special version of Debian Linux that's optimized for the Pi, is the best platform for most use cases, so that's the one we'll be explaining how to set up. The Raspberry Pi has no internal storage, but instead boots off of a microSD memory card that you provide. Be sure to get a card that's at least 8 gigabytes, preferably 32 gigabytes or higher, and has Class 10 speed. See our list of best Raspberry Pi microSD cards. It almost goes without saying, but you'll need some kind of card reader to write the OS to it from your PC. Headless install for Raspberry Pi. If you just want to experiment with the Pi or use it to control physical objects like lights, motors and sensors, you don't need to give it its own screen and keyboard. Follow our separate instructions for how to do a headless install on the Raspberry Pi, and you can control the device from the desktop of your PC or Mac using VNC or SSH remote access software. Downloading and installing Raspberry Pi OS. Once you have all the components you need, use the following steps to create the boot disk you will need to set up your Raspberry Pi. These steps should work on using a Windows, Mac or Linux-based PC. We tried this on Windows, but it should be the same on all three. 1. Insert a microSD card reader into your computer. 2. Download and install the official Raspberry Pi Imager, available for Windows, MacOS, or Linux. This app will both download and install the latest Raspberry Pi OS. There are other ways to do this, namely by downloading a Raspberry Pi OS image file and then using a third-party app to burn it, but the Imager makes it easier. 3. Click Choose OS. 4. Click Choose Storage and pick the SD card you're using. 5. Click the Settings button, or hit Ctrl plus Shift plus X fields as follows. Set hostname, the name of your Pi. It could be Raspberry Pi or anything you like. Enable SSH. Allow SSH connections to the Pi. Recommended. Use password authentication / public key method of logging in via set username and password. Pick the username and password you will use for the Pi. Configure wireless LAN. Set the SSID and password of Wi-Fi network. 7. Click Write. The app will now take a few minutes to download the OS and write to your card. After you're done writing the Raspberry Pi OS to a microSD card, it's time for the moment of truth. 1. Insert the microSD card into the Raspberry Pi. 2. Connect the Raspberry Pi to a monitor, keyboard, and mouse. 3. Connect an Ethernet cable if you plan to use wired internet. 4. Plug the Pi in to power it on. 1. Click Next on the dialog box. 2. Set your country and language and click Next. The default choices may already be the correct ones. 3. Enter a username and password you wish to use. 4. For your primary login, the size of the desktop to on. 5. The borders of the desktop are cut off. Network on the screen after. Just click Next. Provided that you are connecting via Wi-Fi. If you don't have Wi-Fi or are using Ethernet, you can skip this. 6. Enter your Wi-Fi password unless you were using Ethernet and skip. 7. Click Next when prompted to update software. This will only work when you are connected to the internet, and it can take several minutes. If you are not connected to the internet, click Skip. 8. Click Restart. 1. Open the screen configuration menu by clicking on the Pi icon, then selecting Preferences greater than Screen Configuration. 2. Right-click on the HDMI box and select your resolution from the resolution menu. 3. Click the checkbox. The screen resolution will update. 4. Click Yes to reboot.